Huntridge Park in downtown Las Vegas has been fenced off and officially closed since 2020. Why? And will it ever reopen? Today on CityCast Las Vegas, I talk with Freddie Godinez and Randy Mendre. They're the co-founders of the nonprofit Friends of Huntridge Park. And we talk about everything Huntridge Park could be to our city and what's getting in the way. It's Tuesday, January 20th. I'm Sonia Cho Swanson, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. Freddie, Randy, welcome to the podcast. Good to have y'all on.
Hi, Sonia. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
And I have to start this off with a confession. I have never been to Huntridge Park before.
It's a cute little park, and it's been there for a long time. It's been there since the early 1940s when the city received that as a deed. So it's definitely there.
Yeah, it's there. But I think part of the reason, because I've been in Vegas, since long before 2020. But I think part of the reason is it's just got this like weird islandy kind of design. It feels like really impossible to get to. So Freddie, you mentioned the 1940s. Maybe you could explain a little bit of the history of the park and how it came to exist in the middle of like all this traffic on Maryland Parkway.
Absolutely. So the park was given to the city as a deed and a trust in the early 1940s as part of a first kind of planned neighborhood community, the Huntridge neighborhood. It's a 3.5-acre park that served the community as it was being developed. It wasn't actually opened until the late 1950s and 60s, but it's been part of the history of Las Vegas for a long time.
Has it always been like in the middle of Maryland Parkway though?
So the park, when they did open it, from what I've heard from people that were around back then, the Maryland Parkway was really only one lane on each side. And down the center of the street, it had trees that went all the way down from Charleston all the way as far as Sahara. So Maryland Parkway actually grew in size and kind of overtook the park. I think back then, nobody ever envisioned that there were going to be 3 lanes on both sides going north and south.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so the Maryland Parkway kind of grew around Huntridge Park over the years.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, one of the biggest issues with the park now is accessibility to the park, as you mentioned, especially with the development that's happening along the Maryland Parkway corridor with the bus rapid transit system.
Before we get to that, how about this? Why don't you walk me through the park's ups and downs? Because, when you hear about Huntridge Park, honestly, in Las Vegas, there's a little bit of like a wince and like man, that's so sad because you've just heard so many incidents that have happened. The park's been opened and closed and opened and closed. So can you kind of walk me through some of those ups and downs of the park over the years?
Yeah, of course. So as I mentioned, the park was kind of initially opened in the 1940s when it was given as a deed to the city through 1957. From 1957 until really the 1970s, it went through a really great, what we call the golden years. And you can actually find a history of the park on our website, friendsofhuntridgepark.org. We collaborated with Alan Rogers, who works with the Nevada Preservation. He was able to provide a lot of really the history of the park. During the 1970s, as I mentioned, it went through a great era. A lot of families got in the park, baseball leagues. But then even in the 1970s, early on, that's kind of really a hit during a crisis. There was an overdose that happened in the park in 1971. In that same year, there was a major police raid that arrested 14 people and confiscated drugs. They decided to close the park for the first time.
Okay, so 1970s is the first closure we see of Huntridge Park. All right.
Exactly. 1971 through 1989, during the Vietnam War, there were oppositions to the park closure. And early in the 1980s, again, there was reattempts to reopen the park to make improvements. But there was also, again, issues still with, safety issues with drug overdoses, issues with the unhoused community.
So over the course of the 70s and 80s, there are like periods of time when the park is open, then it gets closed again, then it's open, then it's closed again. Is that kind of the pattern? The pattern,
unfortunately. This park has gone through a lot of that throughout the years. In the early 2000s, 2001 specifically, there was a steering committee that was created to try and mitigate a lot of these issues that the park was going through. And they poured in $1.5 million to reinvest in the park and reopen the park. But even with that reopening of the park, it didn't really solve any of the issues in terms of safety to access the park, safety with a lot of the issues that the city was having with the unhoused community. And then unfortunately safety in terms of a lot of the violence and things that were happening within just the downtown neighborhood as it was growing and changing.
I see. So that was kind of happening hand in hand. But Randy, you have lived in this area for the last 25 years or more?
Downtown since 98 and in my present house for this past January 26, 25 years.
Okay, so what are your memories of the Huntridge Park then?
Well, I was here when they did the renovation.
Okay.
In 2000. And what really I see the problem is they made improvements into the park, but the park couldn't keep up with everything else that was happening around the neighborhood.
Okay.
So you have to think back then, there wasn't an arts district. They were already starting to have problems with the local business and everything else moving out of here. There was a huge homeless problem. So the attempts they made to update the park couldn't keep up with everything else that was happening around the community. And, the neighborhoods now, they're deemed historic. They weren't back then.
Yeah.
So whatever they were trying to do wasn't enough. It was really just putting a Band-Aid on a bigger problem.
I see. Okay, and then let's now fast forward to the present moment, the most recent closure in 2020. Why is the park currently closed?
So COVID obviously was a big factor in the park closing and staying closed.
That seems so counterintuitive because everyone was trying to get outside during COVID though, right?
Yeah, exactly. But again, to Randy's point, a lot of the same issues that the park has faced in the early 1970s with the unhoused, with issues with safety, with access to the park, are all the same issues that the park faces now, but even more. So it really now requires really creative solutions for us to be able to actually reopen the park for the community.
What was the reason for the closure exactly in 2020?
There was a stabbing, I believe. Randy, was that in 2018 that happened?
2018, yes. Somebody was killed in the park.
Oh.
So that initiated that process of the park being closed, and then COVID hit, so they just put the fences up and haven't opened it since.
And then, the issues with the unhoused, we've had other organizations that, have tried feeding the homeless in the park that then has created issues for the community. As the community has grown, unfortunately, the unhoused situation is a systematic issue that regardless of how we decide to open the park, it's not going to solve that specific issue. But we need to find creative ways to really integrate those people into the community as well. But because of that, most residents are very opposed to getting the park opened because of the past history of the park.
Oh, really? Okay, so residents actually don't want to see the park reopened? Is that a vibe you're getting? Randy, what are you hearing from your neighbors?
There's a percentage of the surrounding neighborhoods that don't want to see that happen, because every time the park was opened, it escalates into a homeless encampment and all the other types of issues. So it becomes a safe haven for, drug use. And because of the location of the park, there's not a lot of money that goes into it. And the marshals that actually police the park, they're already stretched too thin. So then, right away, the problem just escalates. So there's a huge portion of the local community that would rather see the park closed than have that happen again.
And just to add to that, the park is also one of the only green spaces in downtown, one of the very few. So it makes sense that, unfortunately, the unhoused need obviously a place to, shield themselves from the sun.
Right. Our brutal desert sun.
Yeah. Which is, something that, again, we need to find creative solutions for that as well.
And then you could also look at, so when Huntridge Park was closed, then you have right down the road, JC Park. And now they're going through those same issues that Huntridge Park did, when it was open. So it just moves around. It's
right. Or even a block south, Baker Park. I've been to Baker Park and
yes.
Seen, the unhoused folks kind of congregating there as well, because there are bathrooms and water and
water.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, they did actually, the city, when they did the the renovation in 2000, there was a small water feature for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And true story, I was down there with my daughter. It had worked for a while, then it stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And when they had city maintenance guys down there, they actually unplugged the system and used it in another park on the west side of town. And the guy pretty much told me that we don't give a shit about this park. And
Wow.
the homeless actually use this park for, to wash in, take showers, do their laundry. So that there's that stigma to the park that
Right.
there's a certain percentage of the city and the population around it that just really don't care about the park.
Yeah. And to be fair, these are all basic human needs that people need to meet somehow, right? Like getting water and bathing and finding shelter from the sun. But back to the park, though, it just sounds like, honestly, you're kind of making the case for why this park should be closed. I want to hear from y'all, since you are the friends of Huntridge Park. Why do you think it should be reopened?
Well, I think what we're trying to accomplish as an organization is really come up with really creative solutions and learn from things that have not happened in the past in terms of the park opening and how we can mitigate all those issues and really come up with a creative solution to reopen the park. The biggest one that's happening now is the investment that's happening all along the Maryland Parkway corridor. There's huge infrastructure that's happening, connecting UNLV all the way through downtown, through the medical district, and this corridor that's being reinvested in.
And this is a transit project, right? This is like a RTC kind of transit.
Multi-million-dollar infrastructure, project. Part of the issues with that, they're trying to connect some of the UNLV students to housing as well, but it is a direct connector to the medical campus on Charleston.
Yeah, it really goes from the medical district to the airport.
Wow.
That's the entire corridor.
Mm-hmm.
So Maryland Parkway is the first largest parallel vein that goes through the city other than Las Vegas Boulevard. So it's an important connector, but there were no thoughts to the park. The park was left behind. There is the Huntridge Theater that's being redone by Jay Dapper. They're now actually moving with that redevelopment that's happening there, which is really adjacent to the park. There are all these things that are happening within the community. We've seen the growth that's happening within the neighborhoods of downtown, and this poor little park is just being left behind as a missed opportunity.
So there's an opportunity here, but why? Why should we care? Why should we actually try to do anything with the park? If there have been issues over and over and over again over the decades, why should we reinvest in that park?
Well, there's just a huge opportunity there. Freddie went through all these case studies throughout the entire country with parks about the same size of Huntridge Park. And in all those situations, it's road mapped out exactly the same scenario, what they needed to do, how to do it, and how to make the park actually work. So you have this piece of property that's sitting adjacent to the Arts District and the future home of the Huntridge Theater, which will get done at some point. And that's going east-west. And then you're in between UNLV with the Judy Bailey Theater and Artemis Ham Hall. You have the Beverly Theater. You have the theaters that are downtown. You have LVA, which has a theater program. It's an arts high school. And then also, if you want to stretch out all the way to the Smith Center. So right in the middle there, you have an opportunity with the park, which has had some form of an amphitheater, where you have an outdoor venue that could be tied into all these things. And if you think even bigger picture, you have the revitalization of all these neighborhoods, not just the businesses. A lot of people want to move down here because we're 2 blocks from the Arts District. Now, the park's a little bit further down, but it sits almost square right in the center of everything that's happening. So there's a massive opportunity to do something that's generational and that's just not for the neighborhood, but for the city, for the state, something that nationwide people could come down and enjoy and be a part of. Like I said, with the case studies, there's examples, Bryant Park, Little Island, the High Line, where it just
the High
changed
Line in New York. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gorgeous park.
I reference that a lot and, I've studied that inside and out. that changed the entire dynamic of that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it changed the business culture. It changed the residential culture, you know, with a lot of new growth, buildings and everything else. So when we talk about the park, there's also the surrounding area. You know, there's a lot of businesses that are buildings that are set up for business that are around that park. So it has its initial footprint, but then it also expands out north, south, east, and west. And that whole area could be turned into something that nobody's actually seen here in town.
Mm-hmm.
And then the park becomes the heart of that whole thing.
Freddie, you've done some work with the landscape architecture students at UNLV, kind of, I guess, envisioning out possible futures for the park. What are some of the wildest hopes and dreams that you've seen come to life in projects with them and maybe in your imagination as well?
Yeah, so my background is actually landscape architecture. I have an undergrad in landscape architecture from UNLV, and I went on to pursue a master's in urban planning from USC. So all of that, my studies in that background really is what brought in the opportunity to really collaborate and work with the landscape architecture students at UNLV. We wanted to bring them in because we wanted something completely out of the box and different. These are third-year students, so they're not necessarily professionally trained in the field yet, but I wanted to have the ability to really think outside the box, do something that hasn't been done before for the park specifically, and really reignite the possibility for the park to reopen. We had some students splitting the park right in the middle, creating two separate plazas for the park. We had some students creating bridges that connected to provide access to the park safely. I mean, Randy and I have ideas of really kind of enclosing the park, creating an opening and an entrance for the park, while Friends of Huntridge Park really takes over the operations, the programming, the activation for the park year round.
So this nonprofit that you guys are running would actually be actively involved in the daily operations of this park.
Yes. So the idea is that Friends of Huntridge Park creates an official public-private partnership with the city of Las Vegas, and the organization takes over the park's operations through that partnership. And this could easily create a model that can be replicated for other underutilized green spaces within the city as well.
Okay. Yeah. So that's actually really interesting because I think one of the questions I would have, like if I was a neighbor who was really hesitant about the reopening of the park, my big question would be, what's going to make it different this time, right? And you've mentioned the fact that there's a renewed investment in the whole Maryland corridor. The neighborhood around it is changing. And now you're bringing up this public-private partnership, you know, the nonprofit plus the city. So are those the three key elements that would make this new reopening different from past reopenings?
100%. It's really this public-private partnership, I may reference them as P3s, is really the key component in reopening the park appropriately. And within that is being strategic about finding the proper collaboration and partners to help mitigate a lot of the issues that have happened in the past.
We know all the problems already. So we have a bullet list of that. So we stay away from all that. And then we're looking, like with the students, outside the box. In every day, nothing's off the table. So we're trying to turn the park into an asset. So that way it ties into the, you know, the art part of the community, the theater part of the community, you know, the green space part of the community, all these different things. So then in doing that, it becomes an asset to the neighborhood, to the homes. So one of the reasons why you want to move in our neighborhood, besides the arts district, now you have this park that's unlike any other park here in the city. And it's tied into all these components.
Really quick, just going back to public-private partnerships, because I know a lot of people may not know what that really is. So public-private partnerships is really support from private entities, whether nonprofits or corporations, and helping build infrastructure for public services by combining the government resources from the private sector innovation, funding, efficiency, and then allowing all these projects that you normally see, you know, roads, hospitals, sometimes schools. A lot of those are already built through public-private partnerships. And as what Randy mentioned, you know, there's tons of case studies that we've read and gone through where these P3s have already worked throughout the nation. And what we're trying to do is look at those
like Highline Park, right? I mean, that's the example, right?
The Highland Park, Central Park is a public-private partnership. Bryant Park is a P3. Most of the Pittsburgh parks are. They're run and operated by nonprofits or private entities with the support from the cities. But what really is, it helps just really mitigate a lot of the issues, specifically with funding. Cities unfortunately don't have unlimited resources to be able to bring parks to life. And that's what we're trying to do.
I mean, isn't that the solution at the end of the day is like, just throw some more money at it, right? I mean, but it sounds like it's part of like this bigger ongoing issue. So I guess like what my final question for y'all is, what is downtown and Las Vegas broadly missing out on by not having Huntridge Park open right now? Randy, why don't you start us off here first?
There's no park downtown anywhere.
Yeah. Well, there's Baker Park. There's
yeah, but that's more on the fringe of what would be considered downtown.
Walkable.
So, yeah, without everything that's developed, there's not a lot of green space that's been considered. The city has little things that are called pocket parks, but we're talking about a space that's 3.5 acres. And one of the things, not to go off on a tangent that we're looking at, but if we went subterranean or built another level to the park, we take 3.5 acres and turn it into 9 acres.
He's thinking big.
I love all this imagination.
This is like really creative.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you take something that some people might say is small, and if it can evolve into something bigger, totally conceptual, but it becomes the heart of all these little districts. When the Huntridge Theaters opens up finally, that's going to change the entire dynamic of this corner, 100%. And then, not that the Arts District is expanding their footprint, but they're bleeding into the east side of town. And there's also a huge push with the city to actually put more money and redevelop the east side of town. It's an undervalued part of the city. And like I said, you have the writer's block.
I love writer's block. Yeah.
It's kind of sitting out
Amazing
on an
bookstore.
island. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And the Beverly Theater, right? Adjacent.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if we can tie into all these things, other things will be developed in between all these empty spaces that are there. We don't want to just have a park. We want to look to the future and have something that's revolutionary.
Mm-hmm. Freddie, what do you think Las Vegas is missing out on by not having Huntridge Park open?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think it's another cultural hub that the community needs, specifically for that specific neighborhood. I really see the Huntridge Park as the heart, as Randy mentioned, of the community. Having the park be kind of the central and the connector that really connects all of these partnerships within the community to really bring something that's innovative and new and fresh and important part of the growth of what's happening in downtown Las Vegas.
Well, I hope that your plans come to fruition so that I can go and visit the park, enjoy the park. Randy, Freddie, thank you both so much for joining us today on CityCast Las Vegas.
Great. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
That is all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. Don't forget you can support this show and get some great perks by becoming a CityCast Las Vegas neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Take care.